Hello and welcome to your 5-minute or less book review. My name is Drea, I'm with the Hillsboro Public Library, and I'm here to give you a book review that will take less than 5 minutes but could change the course of your life. When I was told I had to do a book report for the City of Hillsboro employees, I knew immediately the book I wanted to do. By great coincidence, my favorite book. That book is, of course, World War Z. This book has everything I like. It's got zombies, it has an alternate universe, there are footnotes, and of course, civic pride. If you haven't read this book, you probably don't realize this, but the subtitle is An Oral History of the Zombie War. Now, obviously we didn't live through a zombie war, which means we know this book isn't real. It takes place in another universe, and yet that universe thinks it's the only one. Freaky, huh? Anyway, it's an oral history, which means congratulations, we survived it. Well, some of us did. It was pretty devastating. Now, when you read an oral history of World War II, and if someone says something about, well, it was December 6th and I was in Honolulu with a 3-day pass, you know life is not going to go the way this man expects. But if you're reading a book called World War Z and they talk about something like the Battle of Yonkers, you're not going to know what they're talking about. But you will the next time you read it, and the time after that. Context will appear as you read, but sometimes not in the right order. You won't find out what happened at the Battle of Yonkers for a few chapters. But this book takes you through the start, what happened in China and what happened in South Africa. It takes you through the panic and through the government's response to that first panic and to the response to that panic. And face it, it's just a series of responses to panics for quite a while until things start to change, until someone gets up and says, we need to do things in a different manner. And boy, do they. Now, later in the book, once we realize we're probably going to survive, or at least some of us will, you're going to realize, how do we do this? How do we get people back on their feet? How do we get people motivated? Because it's a scary world. Everyone's lost loved ones. Everyone's lost just about everything they have. And for me, one of the things that really brought this home was in a chapter where we're talking to someone who's sort of the quartermaster of the United States. He's the person who's expected to figure out, what do we have, what do we need, and how do we get things to people that need them. And he gives the narrator, he shows him something on his wall. And the narrator says, he swivels on his chair, motioning to a picture above his desk. I lean closer and see it's not a picture, but a framed label. Ingredients: molasses from the United States, anise from Spain, licorice from France, vanilla bourbon from Madagascar, cinnamon from Sri Lanka. It goes on for a while. And at the end of this, the man says, and that's just for a bottle of peacetime root beer. Now, that really affected me because as a kid, I really liked root beer, and it's the sort of thing that when you go into the 7-Eleven, you see it. You're looking for something else, but you see root beer. Only a couple people really drink root beer these days, and yet you can find it everywhere. It is more United States considered sort of soda than Coca-Cola. And the idea that we can't make root beer anymore, that this is what it takes to make root beer, this sort of struck me. The supply lines are cut. If you live in Hillsboro, going to Portland is suddenly an all-day event and something you plan for. And if someone that you know in your neighborhood has a friend visiting from Seattle, you go over and meet them, because you're never going to see Seattle again. We're not going to see it. If we've lived through this war, our interaction with other places is limited to how much power we have for electricity. The federal government and the world governments are always going to have enough gas to get from one place to another. But for the average citizen, life has suddenly become about learning to knit socks and grow sheep so that you can, make yarn to make socks. That's the level of industry that we've been brought back to. Here's the deal. Here's why I think about this with the city of Hillsboro. What happens when the power is cut? What happens when the garbage is not picked up? The city gets called. This is your moment to shine, and it shows in this book. I really love this book. I hope you do too, Hillsboro City employees. Drea Douglas, Hillsboro Public Library.